Okay.
And the first one I'll go out for.
Thank you, Gordon. Robert?
Chairman, Hull Bay Hotel has a wedding licence, therefore number 4. I'm declaring an interest with regard to setting the fees.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, and this brings us to the agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting.
I propose we declare I propose we accept them as a correct record, Chairman.
Seconded by the Chair of Council. Okay. All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Right. That seems to have gone through without any trouble at all. Agenda item 4.
Could I just interrupt you to point out that we are going to move item 19 into become item 13?
Okay. Thank you. One thing, item 6 has been deferred to full council because I myself, Ben, and also Vice Chair and the Chair of Council thought it would be better to move it to full council because, again, it's an issue with late papers and it's preferable for papers not to be late, so members can give them full consideration before full council. I think that's a better way of moving forward on this. And where are we now? Yes, this now brings us to agenda item 4, which is budgetary procedures, fees and charges. Are you presenting this?
I'll present on behalf of the registration team. Thank you, Chairman. Before you, the report on by the Superintendent Registrar regarding the fees and charges for the Registration Department. These are brought to committee somewhat prior to all the other fees and charges in February, March time, obviously because we have a requirement to provide information to those wishing to get married in this community, in our buildings, and pre-book such events. There are some additional fees and charges that have been brought in this year as one-offs, and the remainder have been increased by and around inflationary measures.
Councillor Saville.
Chairman, I'm willing to propose the recommendation here. I think they're very reasonable increases in the charges, and therefore I propose them, Chairman.
Seconded by Councillor Neil. All those in favour? It's unanimous, I think. Yes, I think. Now, should we be jumping from 4? No, agenda item 5 is the renewal of the Old Wesleyan Chapel licence. Again, I think it's over. Leslie's going to present. Thank you. I knew you were going to present something. I wasn't quite sure which one it was.
Right. The Old Wesleyan Chapel currently holds a licence as an approved venue for statutory ceremonies. This licence runs out on December the 31st, 2016. It could be renewed any time from this December for 3 years, which would cost £1,750. Although lots of couples have looked at the Old Wesleyan Chapel as a venue for their ceremony, it's been rejected, mostly in favour of the Porthcressa beachside room, which is very popular. There's only been one ceremony in here in the past 2 years, and we have only one booking for 2016, which is for a non-statutory affirmation of vows ceremony. So it could take place in here whether there was a licence or not. Should the council decide not to renew the licence, it would be removed from the registers from January the 1st, 2017. Obviously, we need to update our brochure, and we would be taking bookings for 2017 early in next year, so we need a decision quite soon as to whether we're going to renew or not.
Okay, thank you.
I propose a recommendation, Chairman.
I'll second that.
Okay. Richard?
Could I just ask what will happen to the people who've actually booked it for this?
We only have one booking for next year.
So what will we
And
do
that's
with
a
it?
non-statutory
So it can take
ceremony,
place
so it
anyway.
would take place anyway.
On the other hand, this is quite a comfortably sized venue. Most of the other private venues are shut for the winter period. So, I
some
mean,
of them are.
obviously, I appreciate that most weddings ceremonies are likely to take place during the holiday season, but
Yeah.
doesn't this provide an alternative off-season?
It is a large venue that isn't part of a hotel
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
a restaurant. Porth Cresser is very popular, but it only takes 12 guests and
That's
a
right.
couple. So,
I just wondered
for
whether that was a
instance,
bit
if
of
there was a
difficulty.
large island wedding and they did not want to go to one of the hotels, 60 people could be accommodated in here.
Councillor Neil?
Respectfully, Chairman, we've established that people are choosing not to use it.
Yeah.
Well,
That is the issue we're addressing here.
I have to... No,
I appreciate the fact that it could be used, but it's not being used. So
No,
why
the
pay
demand's not
£2,000 a
there.
year of council taxpayers' money in order to
For
not use
3
it?
years.
Well,
Yeah.
still £2,000
Well,
spent
it's actually, it really in terms of
for
council
people to
taxpayers' money,
theoretically use the room.
it shunts from one business
It goes
unit
back
to
to
another.
us, yeah.
The money
You don't
goes
lose the
from
money.
one folder to another. It's not actually, but I do think I think it's sensible. And also, it's licensed next year. If there's a huge upsurge in demand...
Yeah, we can change our
We can
mind.
change our mind. So,
But the implication was that it was going to, sorry, Chairman, was it's not going to be put in the brochure for next year, and so people won't know about it. I just think it does provide, a larger venue off-season.
I take your point, Richard. However, given that there's apparently no demand for it, I would really take the views of the officers who work in registration and can I take it to a vote on it? All those in favour? Any against? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you very much, Leslie. Can somebody oik Robert back in, please? Thank you. Agenda item 6, as I said, is now going to be looked up with full council. And agenda item 7 is our budget monitoring report to October 31st. Over to Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. Before you, the budget monitoring report has been set for the finance resources section for the period to the 31st of October 2015. As members are well aware, this is an integral part of our internal control arrangements, and its purpose is really to raise issues which require some form of control through further management action during the year. As I disclosed to members back in July, we have had a fairly turbulent time with our budget management processes following 2015-16 budget setting. And I have said before, it's not going to be a quick fix to resolving these issues. I think most of the reasons for variance are due to either some form of profiling from the budget to the actual, or in terms of timing differences. So please bear in mind that this is not the actual outturn, or may not be the projected outturn for the year, but it is for monitoring purposes, and it is for us to take action and to resolve issues where they arise. I'll take any questions on the contents of the report.
Go on.
Chairman, on page 14, at the top, paragraph 2.4, it mentions there are vacancies for 2 senior officers. Now, these have been advertised on the council's website. They've been advertised on the notice board. We haven't had a great rush of applicants, and I firmly believe that although it requires qualified, or to quote, near qualified accountants, the pay scale is only grade 6. Now, you're not going to have a rush of applicants, suitable applicants for a pay scale of grade 6. It's as simple as that. That is the real world, Chairman.
It might be useful to give a little bit of clarification. on your resource issues at finance at this stage, i.e. not enough people working there.
Well, there is clearly a resource issue within the team at the moment, and these two posts are critical to that in the undertaking of the financial statements work in terms of budget processing, capital accounting. So yes, they are very much needed. This is the third time I believe the council has gone out to recruit for these posts. I believe there has been some interest. I mean, the closing date for these posts was actually Friday last week, and I haven't had the opportunity to actually view the shortlisting arrangements yet. Councillor.
Well, all I'll say, Chairman, is that I don't think it helped on the advert by advertising for qualified or near qualified accountants. That does not give the public a good image. You want two senior accountants and say, well, they can be nearly qualified. I'm sorry, that's not on.
I'm sure that if you are an accountant that has nuances that perhaps me and you don't understand, I don't think it would somebody who's been doing it for a fortnight and is a long way from getting accreditation. I mean, I really don't know, but I'm sure that maybe Ben, you could illuminate a little.
I mean, that was amended slightly from previous recruitments in that it was obvious that they hadn't produced any fruits in relation to staffing. We are an organisation that wants to grow its own. We've got some members of staff with significant experience. There's also potential for other people on the mainland in similar roles with a great experience base that perhaps haven't fully qualified as yet, for them to actually to get involved. We have a definite budget need, and we don't necessarily need to fill seats with the first person that comes along, but the interview process is such that it will weed out those who haven't got the right experience and qualities for this role.
Okay, Chairman, we'll just wait and see.
Robert.
Chairman, I was just going to say that it's not unheard of, I don't think, in business for accountants to train in post and acquire various qualifications as they go, but obviously the assumption is that they've achieved a certain level, because otherwise you wouldn't be interviewing them at all. But moving on from that, could you just confirm that you're looking seriously now at acquiring new software for trying to overcome some of these issues of timing and profiling? Because I think this really could be at the heart of the matter. If you're understaffed in the accounts department, it must be that there's an awful lot of new technology available now which enables certain functions to be automated and give better control through spreadsheets and so on. Can you please confirm that that is underway?
Yes, Councillor, I can confirm that is underway. I've started the procurement to look at replacing our financial systems. And you'll be aware from the peer challenge it was also raised there as a key risk for us and a key opportunity. So I have started that procurement. I'm riskily looking with 18 months for implementation. It would be nice to be sooner, but it is quite a key system.
Say 18 months?
Yeah.
Councillor Saville.
Thank you, Chairman. We are where we are, as they say. It is unfortunate that we cannot fill these two places, but as elected members, I think we should understand the pressure that is currently on the Finance Department. And I'm really pleased to actually see a budget monitoring report before us. I have no particular questions. It's well presented. And obviously we are carrying an underspend at the current time. In some aspects, we wish we weren't carrying that underspend, but therefore I'm prepared to propose the recommendation that we note the revenue budget monitoring content. And may I just say thank you that certainly the Children's Committee certainly appreciated the temporary accountants that were brought in to assist in the Children's Services budget. That was a huge help, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor
Right,
Saville. I was just going to say the same about the adult social care situation, it's going to be useful, I'm sure, to have somebody in to take a keen look at that particular budget. And on the point that Councillor Bilsborough made, I mean, we all know the situation with so-called junior doctors, people who are not fully consultants. The issue that is happening in the health service. Junior doctors can often be very key people. In the same way, you can be an almost qualified accountant and be doing a darn good job. It just means you haven't actually crossed the final hurdle. So I don't think we should necessarily denigrate that particular role, and I don't think it's the wrong thing to do to talk about nearly qualified accountants. I think the chairman wanted to have a word. Chair.
Yeah, I was prepared to second this, but endorse the concerns of colleagues about the staffing of the department, and hope that if this current round proves unfruitful, that we will be able to sort of meet and scrutinise the arrangements to see what can be done, because I'm aware of all the pressures on the department. It's understaffed at the moment, or undermanned for a variety of reasons, and I think it's something that we do need to take very, very seriously. And extend a message of sympathy and support to the department for all the work they're doing. Thank you.
So we have a proposal and a seconder. Any other comments? All right, all those in favour of noting? Any against? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 9, anti-fraud, bribery, 8, yep. Anti-fraud, bribery, corruption policy report. Okay, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. It has been 10 years, as I understand, since this policy report was last brought to members and was approved by them. Over that time, there's been some major changes in legislation, mainly around the Bribery Act in 2010, and the Anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policy has been reviewed in light of these and updated to incorporate latest legislation. And I must remind members, this is a fundamental element of our corporate governance and internal control framework as well. So the report is presented to you. I would take any questions on its contents if you wish.
Councillor O'Neill.
No questions, Chairman. I'm just happy to propose a recommendation.
Chairman.
Okay, I think this is... Richard.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Lots of notes.
No, I've scribbled something on the side of my note here, yeah. It seems to me that 10 years is an awful long time for us to have actually taken to reconsider this policy, and I would like to think that at least once every cycle we actually look at this, because it's a significant, we shouldn't have to wait 10 years to have another look at it. It seems to have been, the appropriate thing to do. I don't know what the senior finance officer thinks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Can I come back on that? I mean, it's the intention of the report to actually be reviewed on an annual basis by this committee. Well, then so to keep it in its forefront of our...
That's even more than I was suggesting. I think that's a very good idea. The other thing is, at the bottom of page 45, just a matter of... I wasn't quite sure what meta-compliance meant. Circulated via the meta-compliance system. Is that something I should know about?
The meta-compliance system is a system we've got on all our IT, our computers, hardware and laptops. It's a start-up screen that prompts users to read and understand policies, take tests on them on a frequent basis. It just helps us to bring into the limelight the prompt for all our emerging policies.
Yeah, meta seems to be another one.
Thank you, Ben.
It's one of those weird words that's crept into the language, which lots of people use, but nobody knows what it means. We're taking this one. We've gone to a vote now on this one. Sorry? I think we had it seconded. So, all those in favour? Okay, no, that's unanimous, I believe. Agenda item 9, debt collection policy.
Thank you, Chair. Me again. We haven't previously had a debt collection policy as far as I'm aware of. We have had some internal and external audit awareness of our situation in regards to debt and our collection of debt. And it is best practice for us to have a debt collection policy, which is set out before you. Whilst debt collection is key to us as an organisation because it actually helps us to receive the income that is due to undertake all our services, There's also a care element that needs to be considered to balance service provision against potential third-party costs if we were to chase debt and then have to recover it through, or the person then recovers through third parties such as housing and homelessness elements. So we have got a kind of care element of this to understand. Personal indebtedness levels are increasing, and we do need to be aware of that, but we also need to be firm and fair in our dealings with people and in our collection of debts, and this policy sets out the framework for that. It sets out the flowchart of how we collect debt and what is expected of us and our council staff. So the report is there for your consideration and hopefully approval.
Chair of Council.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to propose a recommendation, but I do take issue with 2.1 where it says businesses, customers, citizens and businesses within the Isles of Scilly. Of course, we've had historic problems with debt collection, but they haven't always been people or businesses within the Isles of Scilly. They have been partners based on the mainland too. And members who've been in this chamber for a number of years will remember some of the items we've discussed and the aggravation it caused and the problems. So if we can bear that in mind, that would be great. Thank you. But I will propose this, and thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
I will second it.
No, Councillor O'Neill.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, obviously I don't have to second it now, but
Okay.
I would endorse the Chairman's comments. So, I mean, absolutely remember those times where I think probably some of the largest debts we've attempted to collect have been based outside of the islands. So I would fully endorse those comments. I'd also just like to say I was particularly heartened by the wording in the proposal 4.1 that the Council's commitment to engage with those in debt to provide assistance and guidance, I thought was noteworthy, to say the least. But I will happily second that if it hasn't already been.
Councillor Bills.
I would endorse all that the Council Chairman said, and I would add that I think we need to be particularly vigilant before debts get out of hand. That is obvious. Perhaps I'm being light-hearted. Can we send in the bailiffs if need be?
I understand that has been done in the not too distant past, but I'm sure Ben could qualify that a little bit.
Yes, Councillor, we have the ability to and have engaged with them in the past, yes.
Councillor Saville.
Chairman, can I just take this opportunity to actually promote the work of the Citizens Advice Bureau, who actually visit the islands on a monthly basis, and one of their expertise is within debt. So if there are conversations actually with individuals, it could well be worth mentioning their name.
Right. All those in favour? Again, I believe that's unanimous. Agenda item 10 is the risk management plan, and I would just like to briefly commend Dan on this because it was tough enough to read this, let alone writing the whole thing. So anyway, over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to present the new risk management policy. It's an attempt to make it more relevant and more appropriate to the authority's day-to-day business, and to give members an opportunity to scrutinise risks presented by SLT and the authority. I'd like to draw your attention to the risk appetite statement on page 73, which defines and sets what level of risk the authority will accept in pursuit of its corporate aims. And also on page 76, the roles and responsibilities of various committees in scrutinising the risk policy. It gives this committee the role of scrutinising the main corporate risks and also risks for finance and resources and the corporate and democratic team, and also setting the risk appetite for the authority as a whole. If there are any questions on the actual policy, then I'd be pleased to answer them. The actual risks are presented in a separate paper after this.
I believe your light was on first, Gordon.
Small point, Chairman, on page 67, where it says signed off, it doesn't appear to have been signed off either legal or head of department. It just says name of person and date, but there's no information there.
This was produced in consultation with SLT and with Richard as well, who is my line manager. So he's had his eyes on this document and the process all the way through. He's been on leave for the last 3 weeks, so when this paper was produced, He wasn't there to sign it off, but he's been fully available and taken part in the process of designing it.
And myself and Vice Chair had input on it as well. Councillor Saville.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to thank Dan for this. And I have to say it's very good to see the risk policy and the risk register back on the agenda again. Some of us around the table, we've been through a time when it hasn't been very active, but some of us here know when actually it was reviewed very frequently. So well done. It is a very dry subject, but it is a really important subject. So, and it's good to have it. And of course it was a request from the audit as well. So good.
Chair of Council.
Yeah, a very small point that I did actually mention when I went through this once before. In the appetite for risk on page 73, I would prefer to read in that final sentence, the Council of the Isles of Scilly will also positively decide to take calculated risks. I don't like the idea of just taking risks willy-nilly. I'd like to see a guarantee that they have thought about. But as I say, it's a small point, and I do share the congratulations to the body of work that it's...
Thank you. Yeah, I'll make that adjustment when we present it to full council, for full council.
Are there any other comments? I don't believe it has. Seconded. Right, all those in favour of accepting the risk register? Again, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. I think probably you deserved about an hour and a half chatting about this, really, given the amount of work you put in, but thank you anyway. Just need to find the next agenda item now. Item 11, it's risk registers again, corporate and democratic and finance and resources.
Thank you, Chairman. Just is the agenda point, the actual risk register itself divided into corporate risks, corporate and democratic, and finance and resources for your scrutiny. So if you have any questions, please direct them to myself or the relevant senior officer.
Councillor Billsbury.
Yes, Chairman. Oh, the first one is, I noticed this report, all the details on it, all the charts are in very small print. I gave up reading the specs 2 years ago. I can still read it, but it's only just. I am complaining about the very small print. It's not good. However, but the main thing is, going through it, there are 14 items which are at high risk. And when you read some of the consequences of doing this and the mitigating circumstances and what we're going to do about it, I think we have a monumental task before us to escape the consequences of the high risk. I will not go through them now. In the report, 14 items are at very high risk. What are we going to do about it?
The idea of the risk registers is to publicise and make public those risks and to focus people's minds on the solutions, the mitigating actions that we can do for that. The actual answers themselves, the council has been through a massive time of change, so there are going to be areas that need prioritising. The idea is that each department, the corporate body itself, has corporate risks that members and the senior leadership team take responsibility for. So this is the point of this paper, is to publicise those risks and for you to scrutinise, to ask the senior leadership team what they are doing about them.
But Chairman, I agree, but I take your point. It's an unfair question to ask, but I see this as a downward path to doom if we don't have resources and we're going down and down all the time. There's things which ought to be done which have not been done, and it does not bode well for us. That's what I'll say.
Sorry. As Chairman, if I can just come in, the whole point of this really is to actually identify risks, but also to manage those risks as well. And of course, as a senior leadership team, we'll be reviewing each of those risks. And you'll see, actually in the risk registers, you'll see that there are kind of planned mitigation and actions. So clearly, you know, the whole purpose of managing risk and assessing risk is that it's subject to review.
And I think it's worth pointing out that the first box, the current risk, current threats, is where we are now, and the second box, the plan mitigation, is where we want to be, where we're planning to be in the future. So those plans are being thought about and being enacted at the moment. So that's where you can take scrutiny, is the actual, take assurance rather, as those planned mitigating actions. Those are the things that we are planning to happen, the authority is planning to happen.
Well, finally, Chairman, do we have the resources to overcome these risks?
I think you'll find it is sort of
Mitigation.
broadly laid out in there what the mitigated and the optimal scenario is. So yes, and I think perhaps the point we should make here is that it's reassuring they've been identified, because if you just carry on blindly through life, if you like, without identifying the risk, then you are on the road to nowhere, really. So
Well, I wish I could show you optimism, Chairman, but I don't.
Okay. Councillor Saville.
Just two comments, Chairman. Firstly, I think in the fullness of time it would be appropriate for members to have some training around this. I think that would help members understand it better. And the second comment, which I wish the Chief Executive was actually here, there is an assumption in this that members have accepted everything that has come out in the peer challenge, and to my knowledge we haven't.
No, that's true.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other comments?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, but yes.
No, I mean,
that light.
in one sense, I agree with Councillor Billsborough in that the devil is in the detail, is in the fine print. I read everything as you'd expect, but I found there were a lot of things that I could comment on, and I do feel that other members would benefit from going through this. I just think to accept all all this as, yes, we endorse it in terms of what the current threats are and the mitigating actions and the best scenario. In quite a lot of these cases, I think there's food for discussion. I would like to sort of cross-examine, and I don't think this is actually the forum to it, otherwise we'd be here for an hour or two. I think there should be a special session so that we can go through this, either informally or in a special meeting of this committee, so that we can actually be comfortable with everything that's in here, because I accept all the work that's been done, but I still think there are several things that I would say, oh, hang on a minute. I mean, as Councillor Sevilla said, there are assumptions made about the peer challenge which haven't yet been endorsed, and I think there are various other things here that I would like to comment on, but I don't really want to do it here, because I would like other colleagues to be involved.
Would you like to amend the recommendation? I think that would probably be the way forward.
I think it does need.
Would a separate meeting to scrutinise the contents of the risk register be arranged?
Yes, we endorse it subject to a further meeting.
I would second that, Chairman. It needs a lot more time than we have now, and it will give members a further chance to read through it. And I think your Vice Chairman is dead right. We can't do it now. It's too important to do that. It needs more thought.
However, what I would say, though, that it will not change the reality of the risk one iota. I mean, they're there irrespective of how much we discuss it. But
no, I'm not talking about the risk itself. It's the mitigation. It's the small print underneath the risks that I think we need to look at a bit more closely.
Chairman, the point I would make is that I think an informal meeting would be more appropriate, because then at least we can explain why we've actually determined these or identified these particular risks, because the whole purpose really is for certainly senior leadership team and senior managers to take ownership of some of these risks, because they are operational risks. I appreciate that some will have strategic implications, but they should be reported through other mechanisms and not necessarily through the risk registers. So my view would be that perhaps an informal meeting would be more appropriate, so there can be a more detailed explanation in terms of what these risks actually mean.
I would be happy with that.
Chairman, I'm not happy about this word informal meeting. It means the press and the public are excluded. Why can't we make it a meeting where the press and public can be there? Then what are we trying to hide by having it informal?
Chairman, sorry, but can I suggest, I think Councillor Saville commented on the fact that we've already established that we probably
require at least some basic training in order to fully understand this process in the first place. So before we start attempting to fix something that we don't understand, I suggest that we incorporate the training process with an opportunity to be able to then take that information, that training on board in real time and present suggestions about how we may mitigate the risk. Just a suggestion.
Chairman, I would absolutely concur with Councillor O'Neill's statement, and I think
I would strongly suggest that that's not a public meeting.
I would suggest actually a workshop which incorporates an element of training plus some explanation as to why we've identified
Which
those
gives
risks.
everybody the opportunity to be able to comment on the mitigation process itself whilst
Yeah,
having a firmly grounded understanding of the process.
I absolutely endorse that, and I think, as Mr. Dryden said before, these concern operational risks, not necessarily strategic. Even if there is an overlap or an impact, it is essentially an operational matter.
Yes, I don't disagree with that statement, but having said that, this is just about the areas, this is not the whole council we're talking about here, we're only talking about corporate and democratic and finance resources. This kind of risk register will appear for all the different business
Yes, the other risk registers will
and
be
therefore
presented
we
to
will
the
need to
appropriate
have training
committees.
sessions in each of those, otherwise it will be too broad. I would like to see it specifically addressing the issues in this particular risk register rather than just the concept as a whole.
Yes, Chairman, I think this can be undertaken in a workshop.
I completely agree. I mean, it's...
Bearing in mind, Chairman, that decisions made at workshops are not binding on members.
There are no decisions made at workshops.
Good. I'm glad you said it, Chairman.
I assume you're aware of that. Councillor Saville.
Chairman, my first comment was that members need training on this, and I think it's been highlighted by the discussion that we have just had. So I think basically we go back to what Councillor Neil has said, and if it reassures members, I will recommend that the committee accepts, rather than endorses, accepts the risk registers appended to the report, etc., etc. Let us just be grateful that actually risks and the register are actually going up the importance within the authority, which it obviously is, and that should be appreciated. So, Chairman, I will propose that the committee accepts the risk registers, etc., and secondly, that a workshop for training and to actually go through this risk register for explanation takes place.
I'd be happy to second that.
I was about to second it before Councillor McCarthy chipped in, but also remind members about the comments from the auditor about risk. So,
yes.
So with that revised recommendation, which I think is a very sound way forward, are there any other comments? Otherwise I'll take that Christine's resolution to a vote. All those in favour? I can't imagine. Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Again, agenda item 12, internal audit recommendations.
Again, another paper to give your members the opportunity to scrutinise recommendations that have been made by internal audit on our internal processes. This is the first time this has been presented to members, as far as I'm aware. It's just to give members the assurance that recommendations from audit are actually being implemented within the authority.
Are there any comments? Well, the recommendation is... Okay, so Richard,
I'd be happy to move the recommendation, and it is encouraging that over 75% now of the recommendations from internal audit have either been implemented or are partially implemented. It's good to have this transparency. We haven't always had it in the past about internal audit, and I think, it's a warts and all presentation is, to be encouraged. There are still things that are outstanding, quite important things that, haven't been tackled yet, whether for lack of resources or whatever. But I think we are on the right road, and I'd be happy to move this recommendation.
I would second that, Chairman, bearing in mind that this momentum has to be kept up.
Chair of Council?
Well, I was trying to second it and say that it is very important that we keep the finger on the pulse of this, and obviously anything we can do to implement the recommendations on internal reporting, we have to, and give it accentuated importance as we move forward.
On that basis, can I think we've been proposed and seconded. Can I take this to a vote? All those in favour? Unanimous again, thank you. I think that is the end of part one. Oh no, sorry, there's a... I'm trying to find what we're on now. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, agenda item 19, monitoring officer update. I think Sue's going to take this in the absence of Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we brought this into part one because of the public interest test. The decision document in this matter has been determined and gone before the panel as required by the process. And so it should not really be in part three. It is an open document and will go onto our website after today. When the panel, who are required by the assessment process, met, I've listed them at 4.5, they made some recommendations, and I believe, Chairman, there's a typo in this.
I hope not. It was... no, I think it's been amended now.
This has been rectified, that's fine. These matters should be taken up by the committee and brought forward. I've come to this quite late in the day, and I have not been able to speak to the officer in Cornwall who managed this process. So, I don't know, Chairman, you were there at the meeting. Do you want to speak on 4.5?
No, I don't. No,
Right.
I don't think it would be
Okay,
appropriate.
fine. Then all members have to do is accept the content of the report.
Chair of Council. Okay.
I was just going to say I recommend that we note the content of this report for information.
Yeah, Chairman, I was only going to say I don't understand why it didn't move into part two. It's the contents of a report for information.
Yeah.
I wouldn't...
There's no decision to be taken.
I wouldn't disagree.
It's for information.
I'm a bit worried.
I had to take advice on this. And
I appreciate that, and I understand fully the reasons for it not being in part three, but I think it's the contents, the result of the process, etc., the contents of the report is for information of council, and I would have thought fell under part two.
As it will need
An amendment.
an amendment in view of the chairman of this committee's statement yesterday in 4.5b, it will need to read the vice chairman of FAS.
Yes, I've actually
But
already...
with that amendment, it is a report for information only.
I already actually previously had a discussion and to sort this out, but obviously it's not gone into the report. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So
And I
it's over to
propose
you,
that we
Richard.
accept
Okay.
it.
Chairman, just to be absolutely clear, the
Vice Chair.
amendment will be Vice Chairman.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes, Chairman, we're talking about item 19, aren't we, right?
I believe
As
so.
opposed to the urgent item. Anyway, what I'm saying is that in this determination, there was found to be no breach.
It's not appropriate for members to discuss this. The decision is made, and it's a matter for your information now.
Chairman, this should really have been in part two. I have asked for a correction to be made for it, but really there should be no further comment on this item now.
I agree. So on that basis...
It needs a seconder.
do we have a seconder to note? And so can I move it to a vote? All those in favour?
Wait a minute, Chairman. For what? What are we voting on now?
That we're noting this report?
No, Chairman, there are inconsistencies in the versions of these reports, which I can't accept this. There's two versions of the report. The original one which came out, then there's the new one, the update, and there's two versions of the complaint. And I can't accept that we just note it. It would be quite wrong. I can't do it, Chair. And also...
Chairman, I believe if Councillor Billsborough has a problem with the report itself, there is a separate process to follow in order to pursue that complaint. This is not that forum. We are not supposed to be discussing the outcome of said report. It's for information of council. If there is an issue regarding the accuracy of it, that I suggest you would approach outside of this meeting the administration's officer and pursue the correct course of action. But this is not it.
And also, this is just a recommendation to note. It's, in a way, it doesn't it doesn't change anything at all.
Okay, well, after this, Chairman, would it help if, in order to be able to discuss these inconsistencies, if we moved into part 3? But I cannot accept...
Chairman, I think we're asking to note the contents of the latest report, which one presumes is the updated report. That's all there is to it. We do not generally compare different versions of reports around the table.
All I want, Chairman, is fair play, and we're not getting it. There's two versions. I cannot accept two versions, Chairman.
I suggest you vote against it then, Councillor Billsborough.
I will.
Okay, Councillor Saville.
Chairman, a comment. I never supported the policy when it came to council, and I firmly believe that the policy for standard complaints need to be reviewed again. I think my personal opinion is, and it is a personal opinion, that members should not be so involved in this.
I completely concur. However, that is not...
That is for the future.
Next
It's not a recommendation.
Okay, in the light of that, I'll take this to a vote. All those in favour of noting this recommendation?
This is the recommendation in item 19.
That members note the content of this report, which is for information purposes.
Okay.
All those against?
Could you record my vote as being against it, Chairman?
Certainly.
I can't give the reasons, I'm not allowed to. But all I'll say is, fair play is not being done.
Okay. Sorry, did you want to say something? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, I was confused, Chairman, as why you were continuing to allow Councillor Billsborough to use this as an opportunity to express his personal opinions on an issue that we've already taken a democratic vote on.
Fair enough, I
It is
accept
wholly
that.
inappropriate.
Anyway, and now we get to, which brings us now finally to part 2. Now, there's, what I would say about part 2 is that Teddy Committee budget monitoring, which was not ready for the last Teddy meeting, is been put into part 2. Really, at the moment, for information only, I have discussed this with Robert, chair of that committee, who would rather have it discussed properly in the next Teddy meeting, which is in the new year. So that's why it's in part 2. It will be discussed at some point. I don't know if you'd like to say something, Robert.
Thanks for that, Chairman. Yes, I've had conversations with the Chief Financial Officer and with Craig, and there's more work to be done before we can put our finger on the various issues. But the report's very helpful. It shows where the work is needed.
Which now I believe brings us to part 3, and I have to ask the public to leave the room. Have I got that? Where's that thing I have to read out? Have we got it around? Oh, good. So, the little legal bit, part 3, reports containing exempt information, exclusion of the public. That under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 2 and 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of that Act as amended. I think that's it. Being information about the business affairs of a particular persons, being information likely to reveal the identity of an individual. Do I have a proposer? Seconder? Yeah, I think enough hands went up. All those in favour? Okay, that's now we're in part 3.